the author of Out of the Pocket, Football, Fatherhood, and College Game Day Saturdays. He is, that's available where all books are sold. He is Kirk Herbstreit, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Kirk?
I'm good, bud. How you doing?
I'm better for talking to you. How you been? Life's good?
Good.
Family's
Great job
good?
at the Hall of Fame. I enjoyed. I know we missed out on last year, but I thought it was really well done how they put it on back-to-back nights, and every time I watch every speech, and it just you kind of leave inspired. You know, I thought they all kind of hit different areas of the messaging, but loved them all. I thought Peyton hit a home run with. I thought he was about to go strictly SNL Peyton on us there for a second, but then he ended up with a great message.
Well,
it was a lot of fun.
I'll tell you what was most impressive about Peyton Manning's. It wasn't a speech. It was a presentation. I've been fortunate to hear and witness all manners of Hall of Fame speeches, and his speech had a photograph to go with each line. And every single time he mentioned somebody or something, the photograph, to use the television phrase I'm sure you're familiar with, hot changed to the next one. And whoever was in charge of that button for the Pro Football Hall of Fame had the most pressure on him or her to make sure that Peyton Manning got off the stage knowing that his presentation as it intended landed. And it was spectacular. The message and then the method and the way he delivered it too was just off the charts.
Let me tell you, I've done a speech with him where he and I kind of did it together, and he asked, there was a deal in Nashville, and it was about Pat Summitt. It was honoring Pat Summitt, and he texted me like 50 questions, and then he voice texted me like the next day another 8 minutes of, okay, forget number 2, and then number 6, now don't worry about that. 6 we've already covered up. And he goes through 8 minutes voice text, 8 minutes. And then by the time usually you do those, there's no stress. You're sitting there with Peyton, we'll just wing it. We'll go for 40, 35, whatever we're going to do. And he had me so wigged out on like, do I skip number 2? Do I go to number 3? I mean, it was, but and then he's like, Kirk, it's funny you asked that question. He just is incredible with his presentation.
I love that. He's truly one of the most prepared individuals that you've ever met, and the most professional individuals you've ever met. And somebody who's so prepared and wants to make sure everything goes the way that he wants. The fact that he is also potentially the most well-known for audibling and Omaha at the line of scrimmage, it truly is remarkable how you put it all together.
I'll tell you, the SNL stuff that he does is just legendary.
The fake United Way commercial where he's winging it at children is one of the greatest sketches of all time.
They're beeping him out. What are you doing?
No question about it. And it's kind of interesting, and just to, I guess, put a point on this part of our discussion, that he goes in the Hall of Fame with Charles Woodson, and that was, the two guys who finished 1-2 for the Heisman in '97.
That's right.
And we showed a photograph of who else was in New York that day. Randy Moss was in New York that day. I mean,
shades.
Oh my goodness gracious. What a class that was back in '97. Kirk Herbstreit here on the Rich Eisen Show. Before we get into your book, I believe, you tell me if I'm way off here, we're beginning to see the beginning of a super league in college football.
Seems that way.
I think we're seeing it.
One league, or you think it's 4 leagues?
Here's the way I'm seeing it.
Most people think it's 4 leagues.
I think, I don't know how we're going to get there, but, everybody watching Oklahoma and Texas do what they did. Everybody else in every other conference is going to have to band together to make sure nobody else peels off to join them. And they're going to have to band together. And at some point when you got maybe 2 or 3 or 4 super leagues, it'll just make sense to do the whole damn thing,
Yeah.
And I think that's inevitable, Kirk, right now.
I think we're all left to speculate right now because we're kind of in a tsunami with college football. It's just the SEC has been a behemoth, and now they bring in the 2 brands of OU and Texas, and it's like where did that come? We're just trying to get our arms around name, image, and likeness and transfer portal, and now we got Texas and OU joining the SEC. Man, what happened there? And you're left with the Big 12 with still some really good brands, like Oklahoma State and TCU, West Virginia, Iowa State is a top 10 team right now. It's a job Matt Campbell's doing. So I don't know. Part of me is excited about what the SEC has going, but the other part of me is like, where are we headed? What's happened? What's the Big Ten going to do? What's the Pac-12 going to do? What's left of the Big 12? And so I feel the same way. That my biggest concern with this whole thing is we don't have a Roger Goodell in college football.
No.
We have five. Well, I know. I'm just saying we don't have a commissioner. We don't have a one voice, whether you like him or you don't. You don't like his statement, what he's going to do, or his ruling. Here's the voice, Roger Goodell. Boom, there's the ruling. Here we have Greg Sankey. He's looking after his constituents, right? His players, his coaches, his ADs, his presidents, his fans. He doesn't care what's going on the West Coast. West Coast didn't care what's going on in the Big Ten. Big Ten doesn't care about the Big 12 or the SEC. So they're all worried about their own world. Well, how are we collectively, as a sport, going to move the ball down the field when we got five different agendas working in different places? So I think the COVID year taught us a lot of things, but one of the things it taught us about college football is we need one voice. It's okay to have 4 or 5 voices that report to the one voice, but that one voice needs to make some decisions that will collectively help the sport move down, as I say, move the ball down the field to help the greater good of college football, not just the greater good of the SEC or the greater good of the Big Ten. We need to move, and that's why I think I wouldn't be surprised to see them pull away from the NCAA, create their own governing body, find a commissioner, and just start doing it that way.
No doubt about it, because Kirk Herbstreit here again. His book "Out of Pocket: Football, Fatherhood, College Game Day" Saturdays available where all books are sold. We'll talk about that in a second. No question about it. You mentioned the COVID year. COVID, as we know, has ravaged budgets across college sports and athletics. And for ends to continue to be met, certainly with Title IX requirements as well, you got to look for money. And everybody is going to make this sort of decision. Oklahoma, Texas, Gold Rush is going to be on here. And I'm my eyes are peeled right now, Kirk. And again, you tell me if I'm off or you think, this is something that I'm on, that I don't know if I'm reinventing the wheel here, but my eyes on Clemson and Ohio State and the athletic directors there and the school presidents there. If Ohio State decided to say, you know what, we're going to join the SEC right now, and Clemson did the same thing right now, poof, honestly, and it would be remarkable if Michigan and Ohio State didn't, converse on this subject together. If Michigan does decide to do something like this. That's where this thing kind of goes, as far as I'm concerned, because
I've never really thought about everybody just kind of going into, as you're saying, one big league. I've kind of looked at it as I see us having potentially 4 of these super conferences, and they kind of go away and leave and just, like I said, create their own world. But I've never, until you said that, I've never really heard that perspective or that idea. Maybe I'm holding on to hope that there's something really fun about college football that, the Midwest, the Big Ten region and the SEC and Pac-12 and everybody kinds of pride themselves on being strong. It's just like the NFL, different divisions like to think that they play the best version of football, and there's some pride within the NFC and AFC. And I think with college football, the roots go even deeper, and to take away that, we're taking away tradition, we're taking away rivalries, and that to me it's a little bit of a slippery slope. But I'm trying my best to as a traditionalist, I'm trying my best to keep an open mind to all these things that are happening, but it's a little bit scary. Well,
I respect that from you, Kirk, because, in a Super League, I know it'll be you and Fowler calling the biggest games. These pieces of filet mignon will be placed on your plate to serve to the rest of America. So I respect your approach on that. Because honestly, I just think that this is the way it's all going to go. And how would you say the NIL first blush has hit, and coaches that you've spoken to, are they open to it? Do they view this as potentially, locker room splitting, that somebody's going to make $1 million and the other kids who are, 90 to 120 that make up special teams and things like that? aren't privy
I don't
to
know.
it? Like, what do you think?
I think they're concerned. I think time will tell. I would not be surprised to see some of these companies are doing an entire roster where everybody gets $1,000 or everybody gets, whatever it might be. And then at least everybody gets something. And then, if you have a quarterback or you have whoever the star player in your team is gets, some of these crazy deals, that maybe is a little bit easier to accept versus people having nothing. So I think it's a little bit of a wait and see approach. There's a little bit of people overreacting to it. I was just on an ESPN call and a seminar, and they said, I think there have been over 1,300 deals, 53% of which are outside of college football and outside of men's basketball, which I found interesting. And the average deal is $923. So I don't know if it's the sky is falling. All these kids are going to be making millions of dollars the way, there's been a handful or a couple guys have been reportedly making, good money. The Bryce Young story of Alabama when Nick Saban was at a speech in Texas and he said, hey, our quarterback hadn't taken a snap, but he's already close to seven figures. That doesn't accidentally come out, from Nick Saban. But I don't know. I'm still kind of 6 weeks in, just kind of watching. I think a lot of this stuff is social media driven. TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and things like that, based on how many followers you have, will dictate, how much money you get paid per tweet. So it's not like you're going down to Bubba's to go get a new car every week and things the way it's being portrayed. At least at this point, it hasn't been that way after 6 weeks.
Before we get to your book, Kirk Herbstreit, I do want to ask you about Justin Fields, because that was a large part of our conversation last we spoke prior. I think it was either just before or after the draft that you obviously helped broadcast for the Worldwide Leader. And now we just saw what he did, albeit against the twos, I get it, in his first preseason game. I cannot think that we see that anything twitching in that direction by him against the Bills that Matt Nagy would start to have to think, based on what I'm assuming is happening, blossoming inside the walls of that building, meeting rooms and such, going in Fields' direction to start the season. What do you think of what we saw from Fields this weekend?
First, I'll just go back to our conversation. If you remember, I wasn't this way with Dwayne Haskins because, it's not like, it's a Buckeye quarterback, so he's going to go to bat for him. But I was this way with Justin Fields, and it's because of what's inside his chest. This kid is as competitive as a guy as you're ever going to meet. And when you throw on top of that the skill set, and he somehow creates an edge like the world's against him. He even did it at Ohio State, and sometimes I was like, bro, like, you've been on top of the mountain your whole life. I mean, I appreciate you got a chip on your shoulder. I don't know where it comes from, but everyone loves you. But then leading into the draft, they didn't. He was the one quarterback who took a lot of hits, and I've never seen a guy with more of an eye of the tiger, like I'm going to show them that was genuine than Justin Fields, leading into the draft, and he gets drafted. And I've told people who are in Chicago, I was like, congratulations, because you finally got your franchise quarterback. And I don't know. I'm not going by what he did the other day. I'm with you. It's first game. They're not showing a lot of coverage. It's exhibition football. The game changes dramatically, better than anybody, from exhibition football to real football. But there's just a lot there to like, and a lot of what was being said about him, last one there, first one to leave, and all that kind of nonsense was really the furthest thing from the truth. His teammates love him, hard worker, and like I said, until you see him in person, you don't realize how big and imposing he is, and how athletic he is as far as his ability to create, and he's got a big arm. So if he picks up the offense, I'm excited to watch the Bears, and I'm excited to see them grow around him once he eventually gets his chance, whether they give Andy the nod early or eventually at some point, obviously, they're going to hand the reins over to Justin Fields. But he's got a huge future in my mind.
Well, and also Mac Jones looks to be he looks the part, right? And in this offense, knowing how to maneuver it the way Josh McDaniels wants and protect it the way that Belichick wants. And then in terms of a fit, I cannot imagine Belichick serving anything up, coaching style, tough love style, that Mac Jones hasn't already absorbed from Nick Saban, right? I mean,
and I think there's a reason that Coach Belichick continues to look closely in Tuscaloosa for players that might be able to help him out, just because it's kind of turnkey, as far as the culture. They go from one to the next. It's just an extension of what they learned whether we're at Alabama with Coach Saban. Of all the quarterbacks, to me, he processes things the quickest. And I think coming out of Sark's offense, which is probably the most NFL friendly, that was the one thing on Mac Jones. If you're going to look at him in a pair of shorts and go to the combine and compare him to some of these other guys, you're probably going to say, no, he's accurate. But when you throw him up on a board or you watch him talk about film and watch how quickly his brain sees things and how quickly he communicates that, which is right up Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels, right up their alley. It would shock me if he doesn't go there and have a really, really good opportunity to have some success there. I think that's a perfect fit for him. I don't know if you could handpick the better fit for him than to go to New England and be in that offense.
Out of the pocket, football, fatherhood, and college game day Saturdays. Kirk Herbstreit, congratulations on the book. Why and what are there? I guess the two questions about you with this book.
It's not just football or my broadcast journey that I've been on. It's a little bit deeper than that. Gene Wojciechowski, who's a friend of mine, and you know him well. He works at ESPN on Gameday and a great author, has written several books. He approached me and just wanted to just kind of tell my story. He knows me well enough to know about my background. I came from a kind of a dysfunctional family, and parents divorced when I was 8. It took a effect on me quite a bit. My dad was my hero. He played at Ohio State. He was a captain, and I grew up loving Ohio State, and he was a big part of that. And then at 8 years old, he was gone and kind of out of my life for a while, and remarried a woman and kind of immersed himself into that family. And he was in and out. And I didn't have, some kids go through divorce, they have resentment, and they have anger and hostility, turn to drugs sometimes. For me, it was more of kind of an emptiness. Just didn't really have the relationship that I wanted. And that continued throughout most of my life. Even when I had kids myself, it was just kind of a strange deal. So Gene talked me into becoming, I guess, vulnerable for a guy that's incredibly introverted and shy and not comfortable in talking about how I feel about things. This is one way to kind of get things, I guess, off your chest, is to write a book about it. So there's a lot there about being a son and then eventually becoming a father. And by no means am I acting like I have all the answers. If anything, it's the opposite. I'm just kind of telling you about how I'm trying to learn as I go here. And, I ask my boys all the time, because I didn't have a dad at home. I always ask them if I'm doing an okay job, because, you get into some big decisions as a dad and you just do the best you can. And I guess more than anything, it's a book that I hope resonates with some folks that maybe have been through some similar things. And I don't know, I just thought with Gene, it felt comfortable and opening up. So that's not the whole book, but that's a big portion of it. And then we get into just my journey, which is kind of an anomaly as just a pretty solid Big Ten quarterback. I wasn't like Dez, didn't win a Heisman, didn't win wasn't All-American, didn't go to Super Bowls. And yet how I got to the position that I'm in on ABC with Chris, calling the biggest games of the week and calling national championships, and been on Gameday for 26 years.
26. How
in the world did I get here? Sometimes I ask myself that. And so I kind of talk about how that came about and how, that's something I never take for granted. A day doesn't go by that I don't take. I think about how fortunate I am to have the position that I have in broadcasting, and especially at ESPN and covering football.
Beautifully put, Kirk. I mean, there's nothing more personal than writing a book, and the fact that you put so much personal stuff in there, it's something that you're gonna love. I'm sure you get a lot of plaudits from people who come up to you, talking about what you do and how you do it. Anybody comes up to you and says, "I loved your book," that's just going to be the greatest thing. Period. End of story.
I can't imagine.
And I speak as somebody whose book can be gotten for 1 cent right now, probably somewhere. Don't look it up, Chris. You can get it for 1 cent.
Stand by.
He's already saying, "Hold on." It's just, again, beautiful, and I hope that your sharing has improved things for you, Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, it's still hard for me. It's just I think it's the way you're wired. It's just one of those things. I was a kid, you're probably opposite of you. You seem to be very comfortable in your skin. When you were a kid, if they asked you to get up and give a speech, I would pass. Like, I would just say, no, thanks. I'll take a 0. And teacher would be like, it's 25% of your grade, your final grade. I'm like, I'm good. You can go ahead, go to the next person. So to go from that to, working in TV and on national broadcast every week is definitely not what I expected to do. That's for sure.
Well, I know you've been speaking a lot about the book. Appreciate you stopping by here. Would love to have you once the games start. Let's talk. Let's do it. Thank you, Kirk.
Love to. Absolutely. Good luck to your Wolves this year.
I don't think you mean that, but that's okay. No, I know you mean it. I have no idea. Honestly, anybody asks me, I'm like, it just depends if Jim has got the quarterback. That's it, man.
Yeah, well, that's been the story.
That's it.
That's been the story for a number of years. I was on with Leroy Horde earlier, on this talking to a lot of different people. And first of all, I told him how great he was. I mean, that's a Michigan running back.
Oh, yes, it is.
I said, Leroy, when was the last time Michigan had a back that was, you, Anthony Thomas, Ty Wheatley? I mean,
Bianca Patuka,
sure. He was a good college back. But when was the last time they had Leroy Horde back there?
Big dude.
And the same with quarterback. When was the last great Michigan quarterback? I guess Chad Henne back in 2007.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe. I mean, think about that. So if Michigan wants to win in the fall, they got to win in February. You got to win in recruiting and development. But I was watching last thing. Big Ten Network last night had the USC Michigan 89 Rose Bowl on. Gerard Bunch.
I covered that game.
Horde.
If it was the 89, I was 9. If it was the 89 season, 1990.
89 Rose Bowl.
Okay, yeah. My last
Michigan
year was
had USC had Junior Seau, Mark Carrier, Rodney Peete. I mean, it was just awesome, right? I watched the whole game, and I'm thinking, that's Michigan right there.
Well,
They not look like that.
Kirk, I covered Bo's last game. That was my senior year of college. I was at that Rose Bowl. It was Todd Marinovich beating Elvis Gerback. Desmond Howard, your colleague, had a nice catch in the game, and we had no idea what was to come from him in the rest of his career. But I just remember this. There was a guy in USC, number 55. I literally had to look down I had to look down at the number sheet that I got, of the flip card to see if there were two of them. I literally had to. I stopped at one point. I'm like, oh my God, are there two 55s? I thought about.
He was a great pro, but he was a ridiculous college player.
Unbelievable. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I literally looked to see, are there two 55s on USC, and if so, why?
I believe it.
Kirk, you take care of yourself. We'll chat down the line. Thanks, man.
Okay.
Congrats on the book.
Thanks, man.
You bet. All books are sold. Get out of the pocket. Football, Fatherhood, and the college game day Saturdays. Kirk Herbstreit at Kirk Herbstreit on Twitter and Instagram. What a story. So glad that he's sharing it. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.